So welcome everybody to our Beyond Bike Month webinar. We've been holding a couple of these throughout May, which is Bike Month, and we're really happy to see so many people here today attending. So yeah, I'm gonna go over our agenda very briefly. We have a lot of discussion topics today. We might not get through all of them, but we just wanted to sort of have some food for thought up here. And myself, Scott, and Melissa will sort of be coordinating, but we do want to hear from people. We do want this to be a collaborative discussion. So again, if you could just keep yourself muted, and then you can use the chat or you can use the raise hand feature to be called on to speak. So with that, my name is Kat Court. I'm a member of Velo Paso. I'm also a student at UTEP, a frequent bicyclist and pedestrian. And I've been working with Velo Paso for over 2 years now. Scott, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott White. I'm Policy Director for Velo Paso Bicycle-Pedestrian Coalition. I am LCI number 4100. That's League Cycling Instructor. Been doing this advocacy work for several years now. Like lifelong cyclist, I was commuting to various places before I even knew bike commuting was a thing. So, who do we have next?
Okay.
You're on mute there, Kat.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. I'm going to stop my screen share. And Scott, if you want to talk about our Open Streets initiative.
Well, let's get everybody else to finish introductions.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And,
yeah,
and then while we'll do the screen share trade-off while they're doing that.
Okay. We'll just go down the list.
Okay.
Yeah, John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm John Iberg, aka Juanito Iberg, aka Biker John, and I'm a lifelong bicyclist, a huge amount of experience cycling, and I was a lifetime LAW, which is now League American Bicyclists member, and lifetime Hostels International member. And I love to travel, especially when I can go by bicycle.
You're mute again, Kat.
Matt and Diana, do you want to introduce yourselves?
You want to go first? Okay, my name is Diana. My cycling curriculum isn't as impressive as yours guys, but I'm here to learn from you guys. Just wanted to join today.
She's very modest. She rides 60.
Can you guys come a little closer to the mic, maybe? We're having some trouble hearing you.
So, do you want to go again?
Did you hear me at all?
More times. Yeah. Okay, so my name is Matthew, and I've been cycling as like my main form of transportation for 2 years now. I've been involved with Velo Paso for about 2 years. I've learned a lot from everyone involved. It's been such an awesome experience riding a bicycle everywhere, and I've found the community here really strong, and I'm here to support.
Great, thanks so much for being here. Let's see, Fernando, do you want to introduce yourself? This is completely optional, by the way.
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is Fernando. I'm here to learn from you guys. I enjoy riding my bicycle, whether if it's critical mass or just going for a ride around town. And it's great to be here. Cheers.
Perfect. Heather, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Heather McNair, and I'm the president of Bike DFW, which is the regional nonprofit in the Dallas-Fort Worth area working for more and safer cycling. And so saw the Zoom call today and thought I'd check in and see what you guys are doing down there.
Awesome, thanks for joining us. Maggie and Marguerite, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hey everyone, I'm Maggie. Let's see, I got involved with Velo Paso with the Save Lost Dog ride a little over a year ago, I guess. When was that? Yeah. And yeah, I've been in El Paso for almost 2 years now. I've been a bike commuter since, I don't know, like for about 20 years. I like to bike commute in El Paso. I can't always do it, and I'm really interested in seeing El Paso become a more bike-friendly city.
Hi, my name is Marguerite, and I got involved with Velo Paso through Critical Mass. And I've really loved the community with Critical Mass in El Paso, and going on all of those bike rides is super fun. I also am a pretty committed cyclist and have been bike commuting for a long time and trying to use my bike as a main form of transport. I think I need to upgrade to get a trailer so that I can do more stuff on my bike. And I'm interested to learn more from everybody and see how I can contribute to try to make the streets safer for more cycling.
That's great, thank you. Let's see, Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
I think you're muted.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, cool. So my name is Michelle Carrion. I attended one of like the more recent Zoom sessions, but at the time I was the dork without a bike. I had been looking for a bike for some time, years actually, and I finally got one. My background research-wise has been on sustainability, especially here in El Paso. I'm born and raised from El Paso, left to attend graduate studies and came back about 7 years ago. So I'm really interested to see what you guys are doing and learn more about the different initiatives.
Great, thank you. Melissa, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. My name is Melissa Lugo. I have been volunteering with Velo Paso as one of the founders, I believe, like the last 8 years. I'm the equity director, help with event planning and just getting folks on bikes that looking for barriers, you know, if people just need access to bikes or bike repairs, just finding different ways to work within communities that that want to use bikes, and just, you know, just helping people get involved, really. As my career background, I've been a physical therapist assistant for the last 11 years. So working in the healthcare field as part of this advocacy work and what that lends to it in terms of increasing physical activity levels, access to open spaces, etc. So just super excited to get the community involved with riding and walking more.
Fantastic. We're so lucky to have you and know you, Melissa. To new people that have joined, we're just doing introductions right now. So would Boba Fett like to introduce themselves?
Can you hear me? Yeah, everybody good? I am Mario Lopez. I'm with Rosa Guerrero Elementary, and I'm just here to do my part. So whatever I can help with. I almost missed the 7 o'clock time. I was binging The Walking Dead again. Good deal. I'm glad we have a few of us here.
Yeah, thanks so much everybody for coming out. I'm going to turn things over to Scott right now. He's going to tell us a little more about the Open Streets initiative that's going on. And just a reminder, if you have a question or would like to contribute, this is going to be as open as possible. So please write in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and then we'll get those questions in even when one of us is speaking. Okay.
Alrighty, so kind of new playing with some of the features of Zoom, so I want to make sure everybody can see the slide. Okay. one of the things as we're moving beyond Bike Month, we wanted to really focus on is what are we doing that we can create safe spaces for people that's outside of what the city has traditionally thought of. And this is something that's really become important during the pandemic, as people really do need to get out. They need to get exercise. They need the physical and the mental release that you get from whether it's walking, running, jogging, skating, riding your bike. But when the city had an opportunity, it kind of took a pass, and we'll get to that in a second. But just kind of back up here, the concept of open streets, so everybody understands what we're going to be talking about, is really creating a safe space that people don't have to worry about traffic in. And we can look at what other cities have done in the past. This is Herald Square in New York City. Some of you know what they've done to Times Square. Herald Square is a similar process where if you look at the left side, it was originally designed for cars and you had lots of traffic, and somebody got the bright idea and said, why don't we make this space for people? And then you suddenly have a wonderful space that lots more people can enjoy and is much better for the local economy in that area. And it doesn't have to be on such a grand scale. You can also do it here. On this smaller scale project, they just removed the traffic, and you can see both on the left and right side, the restaurants really took the opportunity to reclaim some of that space there in the street. So this is where we get into the messy part. When the city had the opportunity to look at its options, we're looking at making sure people have a safe opportunity to exercise and social distance all at once. We ran into a problem. All our trails got very crowded all of a sudden, and the city could either close all the trails and make sure we didn't spread the virus, or they could look for an opportunity to create more space. And of course, what did the city do? They closed our parks and trails. So what we're working on right now is to create some opportunities to open up the streets. And right now, one of the first ones we're looking at doing, and there is going to be, as far as we know right now, it's still on the agenda. On next Tuesday at City Council, there's going to be an opportunity for council to vote on whether they or not they want to open up Scenic Drive specifically for people. And right now we've got Scenic Sundays, so every Sunday morning traffic is closed. There's close Scenic Drive to traffic, and then people have a few hours to use Scenic Drive without worrying about traffic. What we're hoping, and this is a resolution right now supported by Representative Schwartzbein and Representative Nello, is to open up Scenic Drive to all that kind of activity every day, all day, so that people have a safe place where they can go, they can walk, they can bike, they can skate, they can do whatever it is, and we don't have to worry about traffic. And the reason this is important, it's not just El Paso that's looking at this. If you've been keeping up with our posts, you know that we've been giving examples of what's going on in a lot of other cities. And very recently, the NACTO, National Association of City Transportation Officials, put together a pandemic response plan where they were pretty much taking on board ideas that every city, every community was using. And so there are opportunities for open and slow streets, for something as simple as taking a lane away from traffic and giving it over to walking or cycling, or taking the whole street for a shared use, for a slow shared street, or closing it down to traffic entirely for open or play streets. And you see those examples there. Or you can even go, and this is what one of those looks like. This is it's a temporary thing right now, and all they did was they put up some traffic signs, closed down, and people are out walking, biking. But And the street itself is not closed to traffic, but it's closed to through traffic, which also means that motorists understand that they have to slow down and they have to yield to the people that are out there. But they can still get there and park if they live on the street, so that still gives them that option. If you want to do some more interesting things, you can also be focused on some economic activity, which is going to something like outdoor dining or a market, or just a slow street in the downtown area. And you can look at, for example, Mill Street in downtown, right next to San Jacinto, where we don't need all that space for traffic. We can open it up for those businesses. And right now, a lot of these restaurants have limited capacity, which means they're not operating at full capacity, so they're not making the revenue they would have been making before. But if they can spread out onto the street, that means they can start making that revenue again, and that's good for the economic recovery, and not just but it also gives us an opportunity to say, let's look at using our streets in a different way. And that's really what this comes down to, is long term, how do we use our streets? How do we think about our streets? How do we think about that space? Because so much of our streetscapes are given over to traffic and parking of cars, and should people venture out on them, they're often seen as intruders. And so this is really meant, the scenic summer, as we're calling it, and then opening up this resolution we're working on to open up all streets all over the community. It's really about creating safe spaces across the community that you can easily get to, hopefully from your neighborhood. So it's not just one location in one part of town, but if this goes forward, it's going to be having streets closed to traffic all over the city, meaning that in theory, you've got a short walk or bike ride to a place where you can do whatever you want in the street. You can bike, play, have fun, have something to eat. So we can look at a vision like that, and that's kind of open up for a discussion where we go from here. So anybody have any questions?
We have some comments in the chat about some specific streets.
Yep.
And, if there could be unofficial slow streets in other places of the city, for example, where someone puts a basketball net up. Yeah, so I mean, I think our downtown would look great with more streets closed to cars, especially because the whole parking and car situation downtown is usually really tight. Does anybody else have areas that they could think of would be nice to close down some of these streets?
Okay, well, let's go back to the unofficial one. Yeah, people have already been doing this for a long time. You've got a street where there's not a lot of traffic. Yeah, people put out the basketball and they do that. When I was a kid, we took over the street and we'd be out there playing games, playing a game of catch, throwing the football, whatever. And there's a lot of history of that, but of late, you don't see that much anymore because there's the way people drive these days. You're not sure if they're going to slow down in time for you to get out of the street. So there's always concerns about something like that. So let me see. Yeah, and the Sunday morning scenic drive is an example of what an open street is. And in fact, they're also known as ciclovias. And this came out of South America, and it spread to North America via, guess what, El Paso. We were the first community that had open streets, that we had the ciclovia, and the city managed to find a way to botch that, and it's really funny to hear discussions about this and how people came here, they were inspired, they took our example, and now they're doing it, and we're not really. So it's one of these things where, as we look at the future and what we really want to do, these are the kind of options and opportunities that we have before us, and hopefully are going to lead to some real discussion of other options, because this is just one thing we want to do moving beyond bike month. There's a lot of other things we can do, and I know Kat and Melissa had some ideas of where we can go with this, as well as to extend the idea.
So guys, these open streets, do you guys already have some in mind? Is it just Central El Paso or what?
No, all over El Paso, and we have some kind of in mind, but we really want public input, because your neighborhood, the streets that would work, and some of the guidelines that we're looking at is it's already not high traffic, because of course the city council is not going to let motorists be inconvenienced. We already know that. It can't be where there's already a bus route, because we need to make sure transit gets through. We don't want to mess with that. So we're looking for streets that are already calm traffic, so it's not going to be a hardship on that neighborhood. But we also want that public engagement, so that you living in a particular neighborhood, you know best which street is the optimal one to do this, and not just a short little block. We want several blocks. We want a mile. We want 2 miles, 3 miles if you can do it, so that there's a lot of space that can be used to get out there and move around. And it's not just about exercise, it is about the economic activity. So, and it's about transportation. So if somebody, you heard how many, well, you got here a little late, Mario, but a lot of us talked about being bike commuters and how great it would be to have a route like this, or just like the Playa Drain Trail, where you've got a space where you're not worrying about traffic on your daily commute, whether you're walking, you're biking, you're skating, rollerblading. How great would that be? But it gets you close to where transit, if you need to use transit. It connects to destinations. Maybe it's close to a school, maybe it's close to place of business, so that lunchtime, if people want to get out and they want to exercise, they've got a safe option. And of course, yeah, close to businesses. So if there is some restaurants that do want to spread out and take up some of that streetscape, that becomes an opportunity for them as well.
Pat, do you have any more slides that you are sharing?
That's it for the slides.
Okay.
So it was just really to give you all kind of a basic idea, because the next step is really to put it to the people, to get your input, to get your ideas where you think it should be, to start building support. We've got a resolution. We're not quite ready to put it out in front of the public yet. We're still kind of finalizing it. But yes, we need ideas on where some of these streets should be, because we want to include those as part of the document, so that when we go to city council, their first question isn't, well, why are you making us work so hard for this? We want to say, here are the answers are already.
Great. Thanks for sharing your screen, Scott.
Okay, turning that off.
Now we can all see each other. Does anybody else? Hi, welcome, Valerie. We're just sort of going through our agenda right now, but we're keeping everybody muted. If you have something you'd like to add or a question, you can type it in the chat or raise your hand, just so we're not all talking over each other. Melissa, did you want to add something about connectivity with these open streets? Because I think there is a larger discussion here of how people will use them, where they will be placed, and again, getting people's input, but especially communities where people are bicycling and walking as their main transportation forms. It's going to be really important to include those community spaces too.
I'm sure as we were developing this idea, I really felt, I still feel that connectivity is an important factor to it. I feel that people should be able to access the open streets from their homes, you know, and have that option of being able to walk to the open street safely, and also so that it kind of creates a network of transportation, an open space for transportation, meaning that now, as the infrastructure exists, people have it's a very dangerous thing for essential workers and people who rely on bicycle walking transportation to go, you know, from one side of town to the other. Well, given that our bike lanes are scattered throughout the city, but they're not really connected, and we have existing preferred routes as community members that do currently use this form of transportation. So I feel like tapping in on that community resource where we already have a strong network of individuals who are biking across town, whether it be for transportation or recreation, we already have these exercise loops, is how I envision them, as loops that would give you access to these open streets. So that was kind of an initial thought and idea, was to look at routes that people are currently using right now, and also look at these lower speed, low volume traffic streets that we could potentially have closed down for that. So some examples I can think of right now are El Paso Street, which connects the medical center to one of our newest trails, the Playa Drain Trail. So if we had El Paso Street closed down, you know, people from the Chamizal neighborhoods or the Jefferson High School area could be able to access Ascarete Park and the Playa Drain Trail, or Oregon Street. Oregon Street, you know, connects downtown to UTEP and also connects people to the Scenic Drive Trail, right? So looking at maybe the neighborhoods that are there, you know, like 5, 6 neighborhoods that could potentially connect to these loops and could connect to open streets. So we're looking at where traditionally neighborhoods have been underserved, communities of color or Black communities that used to be in the downtown core that have been, you know, there's barriers that exist now, infrastructural barriers, like I-54 that just, you know, intersected through a traditionally Black and Mexican Chinese neighborhood. I-10, looking at, you know, those barriers that they pose, and how can we as community members overcome those existing barriers and create these kind of networks that connect to open streets. So that's kind of like the greater thought that I had, is just creating more access for individuals, and being able to celebrate these open streets and not seeing them as, you know, exclusive spaces for just certain neighborhoods or communities, but having them more accessible to everyone throughout the city.
For sure. Thank you for sharing. I would also like, we were sort of discussing this yesterday, but just how those of us that move through on bicycles are, we have to find ways to get around these barriers like the highway, and we literally like go over or under, find all the back routes, the alleyways, and it's a really interesting way to move around the city. Despite not having a protected, connected network, we're still doing that. But there are definitely places that could be more brought in with this sort of active transportation lens. It's great to get like actual names of streets down. So if anybody has anything they'd like to suggest, you can write that in our chat. One question we have from Michelle is, do we have any idea how the city government would respond to these open streets proposals? And what is more of our history working and communicating with the city? I might turn that back over to Scott because he has a lot of experience working with the city.
Well, right now we know one of the objections to doing scenic summers is coming from Northeast Representative Morgan, who apparently has expressed concern that people who use it as a commuter route will be inconvenienced. So that it brings up a larger issue. It's the windshield bias that's at work with a lot of people. Is they're more concerned with moving vehicles than they are with making sure people have a safe space. And that's why we need not just your support, but your friends' support and your friends' friends' support to really get out the word and push this, that we need safe spaces out there. Because there's a lot of people out there that are walking and biking. You've all seen them out there, far more than we've seen before. But they may not know how to get politically engaged. They may not know about this as an opportunity. And so we need to be making sure that they know, because that's really what's going to drive the decision. The more voices that our city representatives hear from, the more they're going to react to this issue. Otherwise, they're going to go back to the status quo, because that's what they know and they're comfortable with. And that's what they think the people want. And it comes down to letting them know that we want a new normal that's built around people, not simply just cars zooming by. And so that becomes really the issue with the council, because we have far too many. If any of you have watched city council or if you've seen interviews with these folks, right now there's, and especially anybody who was involved with Lost Dog last year, you saw how deeply they dug in their heels, even though they knew people wanted this space. So that's kind of the uphill battle we're fighting. That's why we want to start out with something simple like Scenic Summer, so people can see it, they can see it works, and then build this out so that people do have that opportunity. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I agree that a lot of city council members have economic interests, and definitely we can talk to them and present many, many arguments in favor of people, but a lot of the times those arguments are not carried through with the council members. There are a couple other environmental groups. I wouldn't say that they're official nonprofits, but there are some other people we've been discussing this with to have more of a strategic plan for implementing this. And I mean, I think it would be good to think about, just in terms of community engagement, like what are the top things that we can do? Maybe Scott or Melissa can answer this in terms of communicating with the city, because it's something that I personally feel pretty intimidated about doing. Even now that the city council meetings are online, they're often held, during the day or at inconvenient hours for people that work 9-to-5 jobs, stuff like that. So just curious about the best ways that regular people could get engaged. Maybe Scott or Melissa could help, or anybody else here that has some more experience than I could answer that.
I've talked enough right now, so anybody else who wants to chime in on their thoughts on this, and I'll fill in any holes if there are any.
Let's see.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Well, once again, I was busy doing this other typing this other thing. What is it we need to comment on right now?
We are thinking about the best strategies to engage with our city government to see the changes and implement the changes that we would like to.
We obviously need a Tour de France winner who lives in this town. It's not going to be me. Cool. That's one big thing that Austin has. Of course, they had the Tour de France, so that brings a lot. But
having some high-profile people speak up for streets, sure, that's one strategy.
Absolutely.
We've also come up with a couple, what's the word, like scripts that you can use to call your reps or email your reps with. Just that stick to the points, that keep it nice and simple, especially for first-time callers. I just feel like it can be very intimidating to try to get involved in this process, but we have come up with some scripts before. Yeah, cool. Block parties is one idea. I love that idea. That actually kind of leads into something else we wanted to talk about tonight, which was when we talk about safe streets, who are those streets safe for? And especially in light of all the protests that are happening right now across the country, we need to think about, when we talk about opening streets in neighborhoods, what sorts of people will be allowed or welcome onto those streets, and how can we as allies make everybody feel safe in our safe streets across El Paso. So I think it's definitely worth using other communication strategies with your neighbors, with your neighborhood, making sure that all of you are on the same page and have a just open dialogue, especially in terms of bringing a police presence into your neighborhood to keep the streets safe. I think that that doesn't necessarily work in all cases. And so talking with your neighbors, potentially reaching out to new people is one way that we can keep streets truly safe. I definitely would love to open this discussion up to everyone else. Where do you feel safe? Where don't you feel safe? Where can you ride at night and not be considered a suspicious person riding or walking? I think it's definitely a discussion that we would like to have here in El Paso.
Okay, so I feel. Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, I would like to, for all road users, not to be in fear of other road users. And there is a fear and unpredictability factor, more so that I've seen more so with people on bicycles than people in motor cars. And motorists have tried to give me the right of way when I clearly did not have it. Because when I operate my bicycle on the road, I'm a vehicle on the road. I follow all the same rules as any other vehicle. So I think that's quite a canyon to try to jump.
Okay, thank you for that. Mario, did you have something to add?
Over here by Red Road and Wrestler, where else was there? They've been putting these street lights up, which have been making it a lot safer. Because back in the day, it was super dark. And I always ride to the trails when I go riding. And I mean, I don't know who's coming up with that money to put those lights. Do you guys know?
Potentially.
You're muted.
I'm not sure.
For that particular funding source, it's some of it's quality of life money, some of it's streets maintenance funding, some of it's federal funding that they've gotten where they've done where the city puts up 80-20 federal. If the city puts up 20%, the federal government will put up the other 80%. And a good way to follow that when it comes to regional transportation planning, and John knows this as well, it's to take a look at the MPO because that's where the big money for transportation flows. Metropolitan Planning Organization is a regional governmental agency that's been put together. It's composed of folks from the city, folks from the local municipalities, the various DOTs, the local bus transit agencies, and they all kind of negotiate together to try and get funding for their transportation projects. And so that's where if there's a big ticket item coming up, where the money's coming from. And so depending on the particular street, if it's a TxDOT street, if it's maintained by TxDOT, it's almost always going to come through there. If it's a city maintained street, most of that funding, some part of that funding will come through the MPO because it's regionally significant. Some of it is going to be come through the city, and you've seen recently issues concerning taxes and certificates of obligation that have to do with our street maintenance and upkeep. That's where some of that money is coming from.
So Wrestler, I don't know if you're familiar with the end of Wrestler heading to Trans Mountain. They put that little trail pathway.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's super dark and people can't use it at night. And those lights that they put on red, and yeah, they put them on red and somewhere else. I mean, part of Wrestler. It would have been great if they were over there, because it's just sad to see that people can't go out there at night because it's so dark. Somebody feels like they're going to get raped out there.
Yeah, and well, here's the $1 million question: who maintains Trans Mountain? That's TxDOT. So the TxDOT does Trans Mountain. It does the freeway section right there between the gateway portions, as well as those trails. So if you look at those trails and look at how they connect to everything, which they barely do, because that kind of infrastructure is seen as an afterthought to a lot of stuff. When they do that, their focus is not on how do we move people safely, it's on moving vehicles. And that gets to be one of the big issues that we have to deal with. And if you've noticed that they're doing construction on the upper part of Trans Mountain right now, they're resurfacing, so they've got that closed down. There is no bike access up and over Trans Mountain right now, because when they put together their temporary traffic control plan, they only accounted for moving cars through that construction zone. They did not account for moving people, even though it's a designated bike route. And we've been screaming at them ever since about this, and the response we've gotten is, we can't afford to do that. So they can afford to resurface all that because cars, but they can't afford, in the midst of all that, to create a safe space for people, which shows the priorities. And that goes back to our bigger concern is, where is the safe space for people, whether it be within our community, whether it be TxDOT designing roads simply for cars and trucks and not for people. And when they do, even when they do put stuff in, like those trails along Trans Mountain, or that then goes further north along the interstate, you notice they're nothing more than a glorified asphalt sidewalk. Yep. You get to an intersection, there is no traffic control, there is no indicator of who has right of way. So it's going to be a matter of time before somebody seriously gets hurt, because they're treating that as a sidewalk. But if you're on a bike, you're moving much faster than a person walking or even jogging. So these are the kind of concerns. So it's not just the lighting at night, it's just the design of these things 24/7. Okay. So it's a broader issue, but yes, they need to anywhere where there's people, anywhere where there's an intersection, anywhere people are crossing a street where you have a crosswalk, there needs to be light so that people can be seen, because that most of the time when you have some kind of crash, it's likely going to be at an intersection. And if it's not well lit, it just adds to the excuses that we make for motorists when they say, well, I didn't see them. Of course, to us, that's an admission that you weren't paying attention. You put your damn phone away. But
thank you, Scott. I may cut you. We have about 12 minutes left. So I would like to open this up to anybody that has general questions. There's been some good stuff going on in the chat as well. especially about just routes through the city and the best ways to safely get around. But especially our newcomers, I would love to hear from any of you that would like to speak. Oh, Matt, we also wanted to talk about our bicycle book delivery part. Would you like to speak on that for a few minutes?
Yes.
Just an
Can
update.
everybody hear me?
Talk loud, speak loudly.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So my name is Matthew, and I wanted to talk to you all about an initiative that we were hoping to get started this year, but with COVID-19, plans just changed. What we wanted to do was have a ride where we gather book donations and deliver them to the various little free libraries that are scattered throughout El Paso. The little free libraries, I don't know if you've seen them, but they are at Escalate, as one example. There's this, it's like a little free library, like a box on a stick outside. It looks like a little house. You open it up, and there's free books in there that you can, typically it's take one, leave one. Well, that was our initiative, and unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like a good idea with the with all the precautions that we're taking right now, and since we still see a lot of new cases. So that's on hold. The other idea, well, the other things that I've always looked forward to is the Ride for Reading. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but some of us here in this group have participated in it. I think 2 years ago, we rode from here, El Paso, to Columbus, New Mexico. It was a 60-mile ride, and what we did was we delivered books to an elementary school, and it was one of the most incredible moments I've ever had riding a bicycle. It gives you a purpose. It's a purpose to help your community with your bicycle. I mean, I have my bike back there, and I just have like a milk crate on it to kind of take stuff around. So it was a really cool experience to use the bicycle to help your community, which was through books, which is always something that we can benefit from. One thing I wanted to share with you all is because, you know, we're in this time where we're kind of staying isolated responsibly, something that's gotten me through this big time has been reading. And the resources that are available here in El Paso, we have the El Paso Public Library. Right now they're giving free library cards, and you can sign up virtually. And I will post the link in the chat box along with Cinco Puntos website. They are a local publisher, and they do, if you're not into ebooks or audiobooks, you can pick up local books there. Those are published by local authors. Some I've read some, and they are incredible. It's awesome to support local whenever you can. Along with Brave Books, that's located in the downtown area. So if you want to pick up some physical books, they do offer delivery. One thing that we've done that's been really fun is we did like we started our own little book club. So having someone to read the same book is always incredible. And I highly recommend if you don't have the habit to try to make some time during the day to read something. But that's what we have planned, and hopefully once we have the precautions lifted and everything seems safe, we'll definitely have some book bike combo events for you. And my dog's whining, so I'm going to mute myself.
That's so awesome. Thank you. Yeah, because this is our Beyond Bike Month webinar, we like to think about plans for the rest of the summer, which could definitely include the book drive. And it would be really cool to mobilize in different parts of the city where these little free libraries are and just check them out, provide more resources for kids. Coloring books was a suggestion. But we notice a lot of the times, especially the ones at Escalate, there's like 4 little free libraries. It's not necessarily children appropriate books and materials that are in those. So finding ways to do that and to extend our Bike Month community into the rest of the summer would be super cool. Yeah, we would love to take any ideas. You can message us anytime on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Okay, we have about 8 minutes left. I don't want anybody to have to run out of time at the end. So are there any other questions or topics that somebody would like to propose that we can talk about in about the last 6 minutes?
I have one if there isn't someone else
No,
with.
go ahead, Valerie.
Just really quick. So we're pausing our group ride that we do every Sunday. And this Sunday we felt like it was time to, I guess, kind of assess a little bit more on how we can take steps forward to getting back to riding. I feel like a lot of people are riding right now, but not in like official rides. Some, you know, some states are doing actual official group rides. But we decided that we don't want to continue our group ride yet. Our lift is June 15th. So we're thinking of holding off at least maybe till the end of June, but we plan to meet up with a couple of the like core members that join us regularly for this Sunday to talk about it in person, like a social distance kind of meetup with like 7 of our regulars, you know, just to kind of like talk in person, have a chance to get out. We were thinking about doing like a practice ride just to see what it feels like, because I know I rode with 2 people and I felt like that, like the 3 of us was kind of a lot. It's hard, I think, because we still kept our distance and it's hard to kind of, you know, communicate with each other. So yeah, that's what's going on with us.
That's so cool. Thank you. And you're joining us from Austin, correct? Okay. We kind of missed you in the introductions part. But yeah.
Sorry, I was late.
No, that's okay. In all of May, we promoted social distance bike events. So we only had a couple. It wasn't like our typical bike month, but we are also not necessarily promoting group rides or group gatherings at this time. So just to make that point. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I have been pushing solo cycling. That is a perfect solution to the COVID-19 crisis. And I've been posting that all over the people follow me around the world. And I think it's great for everybody around the world to get out and bicycle. Solo cycling is such a great way to go, but you have to be super safe. And by all means, that means visibility. In daytime, I've got pennants on my bike. At night, I've got lots of lights. I've got a whistle, visibility, and I've been pushing that. It's relatively easy. A great solution to the COVID-19 restrictions and getting your exercise at the same time.
Totally. Right there with you.
I did it in Austin. I've done it basically every place I've gone for the past couple of decades.
Super cool. You're a legend.
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry. That was accidental. Okay. We have been posting a few guides and stuff like that of ways to leave your house safely and make sure that you're practicing good social distancing on your bike rides too. So I would like to point people to our social media pages. We will post this recording as well for anybody that wasn't here tonight. And there's certainly a lot more discussion to be had. So if anybody, you know, would like to continue some of these discussion topics, I think we're into it. That could be part of our Beyond Bike Month as well, is just having more regular check-ins. Even though we can't be face-to-face in person, it's still nice to be face-to-face on video. So yeah, Scott or Melissa, would you like to make any closing remarks, or if anybody else would like to add something, you're more than welcome to.
Just would like to invite everyone to look out for the Open Streets Initiative as we continue to gather, kind of push for it, input, and also once we go live on social media, if everyone can share the message, and also just as we've learned today a little bit more about Open Streets, having those discussions with our community networks and community members, family members, our neighbors and such, so that the issue becomes a little bit more widespread. So just to help us share that information, I would definitely really appreciate that.
Muy bien.
Yeah, and just a quick note, Thursday afternoon is when the city council agenda comes out. So we'll be looking then to see if opening up Scenic Drive is on the agenda. If it is, we'll be posting on that. The next council meeting is next Tuesday. Even if you can't participate in the city council meeting, you can reach out to your city rep, the mayor, all the city reps really, and certainly ask your friends, as Melissa just said. We need as many voices to be speaking up for this because this is an important issue. Our safety when we're on the streets should not be come secondary to whether or not drivers are inconvenienced. It needs to be, if the city wants to talk about safety, they need to really understand what safety means, and that's not simply how much they pay police officers, but it's how much they put into making sure our infrastructure is safe, welcoming, and accommodating. Because if we don't feel comfortable out there, we're not going to use it. And this bike boom that you're seeing right now is going to fizzle out real quick because people are not going to feel they're safe out there. So we need to get on top of this as soon as we can, and we'll put that out Thursday afternoon as soon as we know.
Muy bien. Gracias. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. I'm just going to say thanks everybody for coming tonight. I know it was sort of a later night webinar, but we really appreciate you all being here. And yeah, stay tuned. We might have more things in the works. So yeah, be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Hasta luego.